Hello and welcome to SoaringHigher.rocks, where we're dedicated to support and relationships, health, finance, and just really want to fill you with hope, help, humor, and heart, helping you bring more of the real you into your life. And I have a couple questions for you. One is, are you in a place where something difficult has happened and you're wondering, where in the world do I go from here and how do I go about it? Or are you feeling maybe like a failure, a reject, or like it's too late to start over? If you are, we have an awesome program for you today.
So an exciting program with Madeline Moyer about when life happens. Tell us about it.
Yes. And so greetings, first of all, I'm Rita Rocker-Kraft, and I'm the founder, producer, and host with SoaringHigher.rocks, and just really want to be a blessing to people in their personal and their professional lives with programs you can start using immediately and ones that will last a lifetime.
And I'm Carmelita De La Guardia, co-host and coordinator of International Women's Issues. Also, I'm an international cabaret singer, pianist, and a translator English and Spanish for the medical centers here and also in Fremont.
Yes, so we are so happy to have you join us today. And now I would like to introduce Madeline Moyer, who's first vice president at Security National Bank. And wow, does she have an awesome story to share with us today about getting back up when you fall down, which we've all done, and she's done several times. And so it's such a delight to have her here today and to help us define our true value, what's really important, how we're really valued, overcoming loss and rising up victoriously.
So Madeline, please share with us how your growing years molded you to what you are today.
Well, first of all, ladies, thank you for the invitation to come and talk on your beautiful program. So when we talked earlier about just what that meant and how this would go, I made a comment that we are all a product of the table that we grew up at. And what I mean by that is all the life lessons that we're taught as we're growing up. Our parents, our siblings, our other family members that are in our lives, those are really our first teachers. They teach us our core values, and I was fortunate that my mother was born and raised here. My father was born and raised in Mexico. Both taught us all. I'm one of 9. I'm right in the middle, actually, so I am the middle child, and we were all taught at a very early age that you have to work really hard for anything that you want. We were taught that you have to go after things, that nobody owes you anything, and so I learned at a very early age that if you wanted something, you had to really work for it, and you had to work hard, and no excuses. And so when I think about the person that I've become today, it's all of those first life lessons that I learned growing up, and it wasn't easy. My parents divorced when I was only 10. I saw my mother go back out into the workplace, because my mother certainly worked in the home, but after they divorced, then she got her first job outside of the home, and I saw how difficult that was. And so I was already helping to raise my younger siblings, and I started my first job at age 15. And so I have always had a full-time job since I was 15 and going to school. I had someone who worked with me and let me work on the weekends and worked in the evenings. I worked at the high school so that I could pay my way through school. And again, those are all life lessons that my parents taught us. I remember when it was time for me to start high school, I wanted to go to the high school that all my friends that I had gone to school with, and I was able to go my freshman year, and my dad was able to help pay. The second year, he wasn't anymore, and he said I would have to switch schools. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have gone to school with my classmates since first grade. And so I went and got my first job, and I started at the school, and then I got a job on the side as well. So when I think about all my early life lessons, it's really those lessons about if you want something, you have to go after it.
Wow. That is amazing. So yeah, life has always been a challenge. It's been educational and taught you powerful skills and life lessons that you're able to pass on to others. And I know you have been, and I know you have a powerful story. So before we get into the actual story, would you kind of define what it means when life happens and you fall down, getting back up? What does that involve, getting back up, just, mentally, emotionally? etc.
Okay. So the title of my talk, when we talked about how this would go again, I said it really is about when life happens. What I mean by that is, so here's the beauty. I have a story. You both have stories. Every person has a story, and those stories define who we are. And so I talk about life events. Some of the life events that have happened to me, watching my parents go through a divorce. Nobody wants to see their parents get divorced. That's my first life lesson. I was divorced myself after a 17-year marriage. So when I talk about these life events that impact us, because they directly impact us from a personal standpoint, we start to question our own values. I lost a child at birth. I think for any parent, any woman, that is probably one of the hardest things that any woman can go through, because that's not the way that it's supposed to happen. Our kids are not supposed to go before us. And so, you know, I carried my son full term, and I lost him in delivery. And so when I think about those life events that have happened to me, I lost a job after 32 years. Those are all life events, frankly, that have brought me personally to my knees with each of those things. So when I talk about when life happens, and it does, so the harder part is that every person will go through something, a loss of a child or a parent or a friend or a job. Those are all life events that happen to us. They become ill. Those are all life events. And so I talk about what you have to do to pull yourself back up, because it's easy to stay there. That's the easy thing. The hard work is to redefine who you are after all of those each events happen.
So could you tell us how this defined you? You know, what did you do?
So when I got divorced and when I lost my son, I was working, and I had the same job, my first really full-time job at 17. I always had my job to fall back on. So my job really kind of, when everything else was really hard, my job was the one place that I knew it was a safe place for me to go, because I knew it. I could do it with with a blindfold on, and so that gave me the solace to be able to come in and put the other things behind me. But I have to tell you, ladies, when I lost my job after 32 years, what I did, I allowed that job to define me, and I learned something. I didn't learn it that day, but I did learn it over time. The day that it happened, and I'll always remember that day. Matter of fact, this October 30th at 4 o'clock, it will be 11 years, or 10 years, excuse me. It'll be 10 years ago that happened. I won't ever forget that conversation. I won't ever forget how I felt. And so, because you see, I had put everything on my job. But here's what I learned over time. When I went into work that morning, I was Madeline Moyer. When I left that day, I was still Madeline Moyer. But I didn't know it at the time. And what I mean by that is I didn't take all my skills and everything that I had learned working for a company for 32 years, I didn't take them all off of me and put them in a box and leave them there. They all came with me. But when you're going through a hardship like that, and it was a hardship because that was the place that I thought that I would always be until I retired. And when someone makes that decision for you, you don't have a choice. And so I remember crying that entire day, and I remember crying the entire next day. And my very wise young brother said to me, "It's okay to cry. You can be sad, but tomorrow you have to start looking for a new job. Because there's a whole lot of people that are also without a job. There'll be a lot more behind you. And if you don't get started," now here's the thing that I'll tell you, I was on the cusp of turning 50. So not only was I at one job for 32 years, but now I was on the cusp of turning 50, and all I could think about was who was going to hire me. I have been at one company for 32 years, and what if my own company didn't value me? What company is?
Yes.
So.
Yes, because we place so much value on what has happened to us, what people have said to us. And one of the things that I like to tell people is nobody, and this took me most of my life to realize, but nobody has the right by what they say or what they do to determine your worth, your value, nothing. They have no right to do that because we're made in God's image. And if we are, we're extremely valuable. We're his kids, so nobody has the right to determine that. But I know how hard that is because of things that happen to you, and it's like, gosh, I'm such a big loser. failure. They let me go, and I've already lost my child. I've lost a marriage, and now I've lost the job I had forever. Like, what the heck is wrong with me? And I feel like such a big failure. And I know that's one of the things that it's so important for us to talk about today. Is no, we're not. We're awesome. We're God's kids, and we're strong, and we start over. And one of the things I remember is the year I was Mrs. Nebraska, my husband died during my term, so about a month later, I was speaking as a widow at a large women's retreat, and they said, well, your message wasn't at all what we expected. And I said, well, what were you expecting? Well, to talk about the pageant. I said, no. I have been designed from the beginning to talk about when you fall down, you get up, you dust your knees off, you get back in the race. And that's what we have to do, and that's definitely what you have done all this time. We talked earlier about previous career, and what you said was being pushed into something that you didn't want to do, a place where you didn't want to go. And what happened afterwards, because you saw the benefits of it by where it led you. Can you go into that? We have plenty of time, so can you go into that as far as the benefits of that fact that, okay, they pushed me into some place I didn't want to go, but now what happened because of it that turned out to be good?
Absolutely. So I think what I would want to first off say to every woman out there who's listening, if you remember nothing else about what I said today, do remember that no job or any other thing that would be attached to your name defines who you are. You are, as Rita said, we are all children of God, and that is who we are. So if there's nothing else that you remember, please don't let anyone else define you. When I talked about that I got pushed in a direction that I really wasn't anticipating, so after losing my job at a corporation for 32 years, I really had thought that, you know what, maybe it's time for me to get out of the corporate world, and I entered into the nonprofit world. I actually took I did a job in Birmingham, Alabama for 60 days, and that was really, talk about out of my comfort zone. Someone said to me, I can't believe you did that. And I said, well, when you don't have a job, you might be surprised the things that you'll be open to. And to be honest with you, it was one of the most rewarding experiences that I had ever had, because 2 weeks after I lost my job, and there were a lot of people, this had been going on for the 3 years before my job was eliminated. I was working with several of my colleagues that had lost theirs as well. 2 weeks later, an entire team that I supported also lost their job. 6 of us went out to Birmingham, Alabama. I went out as a consultant, and I will tell you, even though that was some of the darkest times for me, to wonder what I was going to do, how I was going to reinvent myself. I had always been a banker. I had been a banker for 32 years. I wanted to get out of the corporate world. I went to Birmingham, Alabama as a consultant. I was able to put 800 people back to work in the 60 days that I was there.
Wow.
Every Monday, I got to hire 100 people every Monday. Gosh. And it was the most rewarding experience for me. The 6 people that I went to Birmingham, Alabama with, no matter where we are, and all of us are in different places, some different cities, we connected and have a bond that will never be broken, because we were there to lift each other up until we all found our own respective jobs. And so while I wouldn't want to necessarily go through that experience again, it was one that I truly saw people come together to help one another. And the smiles on people's faces when we hired 100 people every Monday, and then it gave me that gratification again. It made me feel that I was doing something of value, and people appreciated what I was doing. So when you talk about what that looked like, and then it also pushed me out to go back into and start in a nonprofit sector, which is very different from the corporate world.
Yes, it is.
So when you talk about what did I take away from that, it gave me a whole new skill set that I could build upon and add to my current skill set. So, when we talk about starting over, that's part of it. You're constant learners. We're always learning. And what I learned is that sometimes fear can hold us and keep us in our place. Oh, yeah. And fear is a powerful word. It can stop us in our tracks if we let it.
Yes.
That is amazing.
These are steps that sometimes we wonder why we have these, things that we need to do.
Because pushed into is such a powerful word.
Yes.
And when you said that, when I talked with you before, I was like, oh my gosh, but then to say what came out of it, a whole new set of skills, the impact, the beautiful, powerful impact you had on other people's lives during that 2 months in Alabama. Oh my gosh, how amazing. And that's something you'll carry with you. So folks, even though sometimes you're pushed into something, you can look back later on and see, wow, look what I learned from this, how much stronger it made me, how much more grateful
Yes.
possibly it made me have it. I remember going to missions in Haiti, and wow, that was one of the toughest things I ever did, and I was a brand new widow then. But the lessons I learned, very valuable. So even during the tough times, we learn lessons we can take with us that are really glorious.
Well, can you tell us more about how to start a new job? If there's something that you would recommend all those out there that are in pursuit of a new job?
Starting over.
Absolutely.
Starting over, yes.
So I think, I think as women, we do that every day. We're always constantly redefining who we are, because as we enter different stages of our lives, we're always learning something new, whether it's a personal experience, whether it's a professional experience. So one of the things that I tell people, always have your resume brushed up, just because you never know when that right opportunity presents itself. I believe in being an avid learner. I read a lot. I love to read books. Books are knowledgeable. They're powerful. You learn a lot. I read the paper. I watch all the national and local news, because what I learned, a very wise boss said to me once. Now remember, ladies, I've been working since I was 15, started my first official full-time job at 17. Which means that I did not go to college, and there were many jobs that I did not get because I didn't have the college degree, and that also defined me for many years. But today I can sit here and tell you that I have 35 years of banking experience. I have 8 years of nonprofit experience from starting a wonderful nonprofit opportunity. I think the message I would tell people, don't ever be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. There are always going to be people who will be there to help you and to lift you up and to teach you the things that you don't know. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to shadow people. And please, if you remember nothing that I say, you have to have powerful mentors. You have to have people who will help you show the way. You have to have people who will make those introductions for you. I networked when I lost my job. I became the biggest networker that you can imagine. And it only helped me because people came to know me. And I have a motto that I have always operated by. And I firmly believe it, that people do business with you for 2 reasons. They do business with you because they like you and because they trust you.
Yes.
And I think that for every relationship, whether it's a professional one or a personal one, if people can't take us at face value, if people don't trust who we are, then it's not really a solid foundation. So I encourage women to find other women that they can reach out to who will be that support system for them, who will open doors for them, continue to learn. If you're not great on the computer, go take some computer classes. There's so many free opportunities out there. You just have to go find them, and that's the part that takes work. You just have to be willing to put the work in.
And speaking of continuous learning, what comes up to me is, okay, viewers, she did not go through college. I know other ladies who have been extremely successful, and men that did not go to college. And now, as a first vice president, I have a friend who had no college, and she ended up being a vice president at an extremely large advertising agency that had different locations. Other ladies who started employment agencies, same thing. So please, when you think that you are too old, it's too late. I mean, Madeline is a powerful example of just being able to keep learning, keep growing. Again, you can take Microsoft Word, Excel, etc. You can find free programs. You can find so much on the internet. I have a blog. I mean, there are so many places where you can learn. So continue to grow. That's definitely, you hit on the head there about being an important step. To keep growing, keep learning, keep reading, keep studying, and how powerful that is. So, and we've talked again about not allowing situations and trials to truly define you. So could you talk to us a little bit more on what are the steps that our viewers could take in seeing their value, and no matter what, because a lot of us have been through some horrible trials, and so where I'm not worth anything, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, I'm not educated enough. What are some things that you would tell our viewers?
I think the first thing I would tell you is attitude. Attitude is really everything. It's how we view ourselves. It's, as I said earlier, it's easy to stay down when we've had things that have brought us to our knees. All of the things that we've talked about, any one of those life events will bring us to our knees. But I think it's how we get back up, because it's easy to stay down and to feel sorry for ourselves. And at the end of the day, don't you remember your parents always telling you that at the end of the day, no one's really going to be there to help you but yourself, and that if you really want something, you have to go after it. So when I give these life lessons, and I mentor a lot of women, and I feel that that's my job to give back, because I've had people who've done that for me. So I think, I can't stress enough about the attitude. You have to be willing to put it in. It's easy to complain. It's hard to make a change and to fix something. I manage several people today, and when they come to me, they can come to me with a problem, but what I say to them is, it's okay to come to me with a problem, but you can't come to me with a problem without a solution. Now, that doesn't mean that we always go with that one, but what I'm trying to do is to get them to think on their own and to find something that will remedy the situation. When you start doing that, and I will tell you, ladies, I learned that because I had a boss who said to me, Madeline, you can come and bring any problem that you want as long as you come with at least one solution. So I think that it's important, and what that taught me is that I do have some great ideas, and that it is okay. And so the more that you can condition yourself to say, okay, this is a problem, now what would I do to get out of this? The more that you get comfortable with doing that, the easier it does become when those life events happen, because you're ready to take care of what you need to do to fix it.
Oh,
There's always a solution. There's always a solution.
That is such an awesome thing for all of our viewers to think. There's always a solution, and not to sit in it, because the word that comes to me is familiar. We can sit in something for years, and we hate it. We're miserable. We're hurting, maybe abused or whatever, broke, whatever the case may be. But it's familiar, and we're afraid to step out into an area that's not familiar to us. And so, what you're saying, sit down and think, what can I do? Who can I connect with? What can I find to help me as far as resources to get out of that familiar place? I don't want to be in this familiar place anymore. It's not where I'm supposed to be, and to really find our calling. So, that is awesome.
Thank you.
Well, it's time to wrap up. This has been a wonderful interview with you, and I was just so happy to have you here today. So as far as, could you please tell our viewers what it is to never give up?
I will.
Your quotes.
So what I would do is, to end this, I was looking through my quotes, and I found two that I thought were really applicable to our topic today about never giving up. So I am going to read these, so bear with me. One of them is, nothing makes a woman more beautiful than the belief that she is beautiful. Again, it goes back to how we feel about ourselves, and that emulates through everything else that we do. This last one says, the strength of a woman is not measured by the impact that all her hardships in life have had on her, but the strength of a woman is measured by the extent of her refusal to allow those hardships to dictate her and who she becomes. And I think when we wrap this up, that really does put everything kind of in a nice bow, with a nice bow on it, about what it means when life happens and how to get back up.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
To
much.
just really, I think the last comment before we close is, as you're talking, I'm thinking again about something I tell people, that we are a miracle in the mirror. A lot of times we don't see it because of things that people have said to us or what's happened to us, even from children. And yet it's like, if you went to a flower store and you thought, oh, look at this packet of seeds, and all the flowers are absolutely gorgeous. I want this. And then you take them home and you open them up, it's like, ew. All these little shriveled up brown seeds, is like, ew, I don't want that. And we think of that about ourselves that way a lot of times too, like we're these little shriveled up brown seeds. And yet when we water them, when we nurture them, when we take care of them, and they're buried into the ground, a lot of times they feel alone, they feel abandoned because the seeds have been planted. But as we water them, just like we water ourselves with good friends and educational programs and things, we start to bloom and we start to blossom, and we do become those beautiful flowers. But it can be tough when we feel like we're down in the ground and we're away from everything. We've lost it all sometimes. So, but always think about those beautiful flowers, and it takes work to get there.
We need to believe in ourselves. That's what I find, is that if you don't believe in yourself,
Nobody else will.
can't do it.
Because
So,
people
yes.
will treat us the way we treat ourselves quite often. So if they think, well, if you don't think anything more about yourself like that, why should I? So that's so very important. Okay, well, thank you so much, Madeline Moyer with Security National Bank. And just want to tell you briefly that our next program will be with entertainer and community leader Camille Moyer. She has a very powerful story about overcoming major life-shattering events and things that she needed to do to fulfill her calling as well. And so stay tuned and remember, you are more than an overcomer. Think about what you truly want to achieve in life, and we will go after it with you. So remember, God loves you, so do we. Bye.
Bye-bye now.